Afternoon. I want to welcome you to the Farmers Branch Study Session of Tuesday, the February the 21st. And the time is 4 p.m. First item on the agenda is to discuss regular agenda items. Okay. Anybody have any questions on the agenda that they'd like further explanation or discussion on? Or
No questions for me? I do on H5, H5.
H5? Okay.
Yes. On this, it's another step forward in the, building out the Burke Preserve and everything and making it even nicer than it is. And I was just curious, if anyone could tell me what kind of toilet facilities that's going to be. I know in a lot of the national parks and some state parks I've been in, they've got biodegradable compost toilets, waterless toilets. Since this is a nature preserve, I was just wondering if we were going to have any kind of a feature like that, make less impact, on the
Yes.
environment.
What this restroom facility is, it's what we would call, it's a dual restroom. There's a one hole on each side. I don't know, we don't really have to do men's and women's, but it's gonna be two universal, restrooms. The building is 20 by 11 and it has a chase area in the middle, and it is going to be a low pressure injection, aerobic system. So, we've already got everything through the county, speaking with them and talking with them about getting everything set up. This company right here, Core, does a lot of restrooms around the Metroplex and around the state of Texas and out of Texas also. It's a very good quality, high quality restroom.
Right.
So it will have all the fixtures in it, baby changing stations, lighting, everything. Water fountains in the middle, and with a water filler. And I know there was a request for a dog bowl, which we will end up adding ourselves. On the
For what?
outside. A dog bowl
Uh-huh.
for dogs.
Oh, okay,
the outside
yeah.
of the building.
That'll be great.
So,
But it's going to have an aerobic toilet system.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's very good because that also ties in with our sustainability goals, and part of our strategic plan. And where is it exactly going to be located?
When you look at the plan, the layout, it's gonna be in the front. We have the big sign that's gonna be, erected there. And it is just to the west of the sign. And it will be facing.
So close to the parking.
Yes, sir. And it will be facing where the bus drive comes in,
Uh-huh.
where the sign is. The restroom is just on the other side of it. And it will be facing the Valley View.
Okay, and according to what we have here, it's a prefabricated concrete restroom. So will it be looking like concrete? Is it going to be stained? Will there be wood or cedar or
It will have
anything
a
put on the
stone
outside?
veneer on it that will match the sign and the retaining walls that we have there. There is one, matter of fact, I brought this if y'all want to pass it around.
Nice to see a picture of it.
I'd love to see that.
That right there is the style that it's going to be, and we have matched the stone with North Rock, what they're using down there. I got with Core Work with them, and they're going to have the stone to match it.
Good.
So it matches the sign.
Sounds like you put a lot of thought into it.
Yes, sir.
Because they want to have something special in the nature preserve and not just a regular, city park kind of look. So,
It will definitely stand out.
thank you.
Is it in the floodplain?
Excuse me, sir.
Was it in the floodplain or?
No, sir. This is actually just up outside the floodplain. It's not too far, just right off Valley View there, where they cut in. I think it's around 60 feet that they cut in.
Answer your questions, Michael?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
The special events? I have a lot of questions, Rachel, I'm sorry. Okay, so as the list, there's 67 total, correct? Can you tell me the difference of the mums and sons and the mom and son game night?
So those are for two different department divisions. But the 67, so that's all of our events. And the ones we're talking about today are those major events. Those and Sun is going to be our historical park, and the other one's going to be at the recreation center.
Okay.
So,
And then the difference of, or why, I guess, the haunts and houses and the Halloween in the park?
So again, two
different
different divisions.
locations?
Yeah, so Haunts and Houses is going to be your historical park, and then Halloween in the Park is also the historical park, but a recreation division puts that on. So it's
Okay.
a large scale event where your Haunts and Houses is more small.
And with 2 Day of the Deads?
So that is a 2-day event at the historical park. And then we also have a dog park event as well, which kind of a stretch, but.
Yeah. Okay. And then, why, just out of curiosity, the 2 Christmas teas?
So those have been popular for years. They sell out every single year. My understanding was that it started this one day, and the desire was to have more. So they fill out every single year.
And of all of those, because we only have numbers on 10, any of them revenue producing or at least break even?
The teas are,
Uh-huh.
that is a big generator for their programs. The dog park events are minimal revenue we get from the booths. I believe you mentioned David Dead, I'm not entirely sure on that one. And then what else?
Haunts houses, Halloween in the park.
Home in the park is a big generator with the hedge, but more specifically with our non-resident fees, so that our residents can then go with our non-residents.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is to receive an annual update from the Animal Services Advisory Committee. You gonna do that?
Okay. Pretty much. I did. There we go. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Okay. Okay, one of the first things we've done this fiscal year is we have changed the shelter operation hours to make it more conducive for residents to be able to get to the shelter and also provide more time for the staff to issue quality care. We've standardized the hours pretty much. Every day is going to be the same time. So as you can see, we're closed Sunday and Mondays. Tuesdays through Fridays, we're open 11 to 6, and Saturdays 11 to 4. We have gone under the umbrella with code enforcement to the new department is Neighborhood Services, created in 22. So far this fiscal year, we have hired a new vet for the shelter, Dr. Kimberly Heinfeld. We've maintained a live release rate of 95% of animals being returned to their owners, despite a substantial increase in occupancy. We've microchipped over 300 privately owned animals in our community in public events. We completed the construction of a new cat quarantine room. We streamlined several procedures for administrative and enforcement. We spent approximately $40,000 in donations from our community on animal medical treatment. And through all of that, we've cared for 500 animals, including snakes at the end. Okay. Some of the future projects we have planned. We are going to update the interior and exterior improvements, such as new landscaping, redesigning the public area, the staff area, and storage areas, budgeted for this fiscal year. We're going to expand the center, the surgery room, storage capacity, and animal population capacity, thanks to our generous donor. We're creating a free wildlife education course, which I believe is going to be how to be not afraid of coyotes and bobcats. And we're updating the city's animal code. And we're trying to enrich our volunteer recruitment efforts with a new volunteer management and training program. And the board has been busy with all of the above mentioned. We're volunteering at microchip clinics that are held off-site. One of our members was able to obtain the YMCA Johnson Outpost for our quarterly vaccine clinics. Boy and Girl Scouts are helping us with shelter projects on and off. And we're going to start looking at a future project for targeted neighborhood enforcement. And as usual, we're a sounding board for new ideas and providing valuable feedback. In the little cartoon, how'd you become board president? You sleep 18 hours a day. Okay. Okay, the next slide. On the left side of the screen are all the intake numbers for the last 3 fiscal years. And you'll notice that the last fiscal year, we were getting close to 600. On the right side of the slide, it's the same fiscal years, but if you notice, the last column on the right for October through February, as of today, we're already at the number of intakes that we were for all of last fiscal year. And that could easily double between now and then. Had the massive influx of animals. These numbers do not include wildlife that has come in or been picked up. But through it all, we have still maintained our 95% return rate. We missed one, but are there any questions? That was quick and
Yeah. Becky, thank you. What is the count maximum at the moment for the center? I mean, is it 600? Is that what it's progressing? Is that the cap of the amount of animals, primarily dogs and cats?
So we can only hold probably 40 dogs and 20-something cats. That is the number of animals that have come in so far, starting October 1st through February, is almost 600. That's like 30% higher than ever before. So we're doing maximum of 40. The right number is probably closer to 18.
Okay.
But that's really,
So those are aggregate numbers.
yes, they're
600.
cumulative numbers through
That's
the
fine.
year so far. Yeah.
That's fine. So it's 60, but your preference, if what I just heard was
18.
18. then
Well, that's what the center is really designed
I
for.
understand.
you
and
know.
That's part of the discussion.
Yep.
It goes back to the slide of the major expansion with the donation from the generous donor. What is do we have projections that we'd like to get to?
I'd like to be able to comfortably hold 25 dogs. So comfortably, that's a lot, but I feel that that's basically that's the number we're looking at right now. I mean, that's the sort of static number we haven't been below 18 to 25 in years. And so it's been that way. So I think that we probably just need to face it. It's got to be close to 25. Yeah.
Understand. Thank you.
Dogs, never mind cats.
Understand. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there anything we can put our finger on why we're having such an increase? Is it related to COVID? You know, people bought dogs when they stayed home a lot. Now they're going back to work. Maybe they're turning the dogs in. I don't know.
That's part of it. When people are going back to work, they're finding that animals in their houses are not working out as they thought they would, which we really do try to counsel people there on how to make it work at home when you're not there. We give away crates and stuff. The other issue that we're seeing is inflation. So for real-time numbers, 3 years ago, your groceries cost you $100. Now they're $250. So you're kind of looking at where does your dog food fit in there? It's kind of gotten a little out of control cost-wise. So I think that's probably our two major contributing factors to this surrender. The third one would be probably a lot of apartment complexes who are not allowing pets. For some reason, some of them are changing their policies,
Okay.
which is pretty interesting and not haven't seen it in the city of Farmers Bridge, but you're seeing it around elsewhere. And I feel it may be coming, which would be really unfortunate. But
So this could conceivably be a trend rather than just a spike.
I think at this point, 3 years later, we're looking at a trend. Yeah. I think it's going to consistently remain, particularly while the population of the city grows, so will too the number of animals that are
Makes
running
sense.
loose. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Michael?
I have a question. you said you had 95% return rate.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and I think that, to me, that sounds excellent. I'm just curious how that stacks up to the last few years, what your
Yeah.
return rate was.
Good question. It's actually the release rate alive. So return to owner and release are a little different. Release includes not just return to owner, but adoptions, transfer out to other agencies and stuff like that. We have been in the 90s to high 90s for the last several years, with a few little dips here and there with some major population issues and some illness things that happen with some kittens. So, I mean, we're looking at probably consistently staying in that 90 to 95 range. One month we were over 100%, which means I took in fewer than I let go. It was fantastic, but that's probably not sustainable. Obviously, we got a good one in there, but we're probably. I mean, my goal would always be to stay above 90%. But if you think about that number, 10% euthanasia or 10% passing away, it's still too high. So 95 to 100 should be the goal. Yeah, I'd like to stay there. if possible.
And you mentioned the volunteers and the volunteer training program or recruiting program. Is it harder to get volunteers now than it was, say, during COVID when kids were at home and?
I think it's easier. I think it's easier. People are back out and doing things, and we're allowed. The capacity issue is not a thing anymore. So it used to be no more than 6 people in the building at a time and such. That's gone. So I can let more people in the building, and people are feeling more comfortable in the close quarters that it takes to do animal care. So I think it's. I have a lot of people approach me about volunteer.
Seems to be a
Lots.
popular place
It is
whenever
very
I'm over
popular.
there.
Yes, yes, it's wonderful. I mean, I can't do it without these people. They're working for
Right.
me for free. They're
Right.
doing my job for free.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but it's a win-win.
Yeah.
You know, you can teach people, not just youth, but, you know, people
Mhm.
about caring for animals and their care and a little bit about the veterinary
Yes.
work and things like that. And it helps you with, like you said, with the labor and everything. 'Cause I know that fluctuates when you officers are called out.
It does, yeah. And then hope that they bring our philosophies back to their communities would be
Right.
really great. That's the
Yeah.
goal. Is to make them fall in love with us and spread the love.
Councilman Jackson, you had a question?
That's a great question. The RL Turner kids come, but it's not formal. A lot of them are involved in that pre-vet program that they have over there, which is an awesome program. And those kids just come in because they want to. Should we get it organized? Probably, yes. I do have some schools informally coming in to read to the dogs. It's so cute. It's adorable. They
I thought
say,
I was the only one who did that.
no, I should have put a picture on there. These little children all down the row with books like pointing at the read. It's so cute. So that happens every so often, but it's not formal. It's just schools. They must be talking to each other, reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, can we do this?" And I'm absolutely, yeah. And they come in for a rotation, and then that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome. I love it. But yeah, I would love to get more local, especially young kids like 8, 9.
Right.
Those are my favorites because they are very
at the
easy to
elementary level.
manipulate. Yeah. Clean my kennels. No, they love it. I love watching them read to the dogs. It's so cute. It's very cute. But yeah, you're right. We should rope them in. That'd be cool.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Yeah, of course.
Continue the great work.
Thank you.
Got
Sir,
one more question for you.
sir,
Yes.
we had talked a couple months ago about some possible software upgrades to
Oh,
make your life easier and such. Is that part of the administrative improvements here, or is that still yet to come? or-
I think that's still yet to come. We basically have when you and I spoke, we were just starting a few things, and that has significantly ironed itself out since you and I spoke.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's
Good.
not, as far as I know, that's not part of the future improvements, but boy, that's gotten a lot easier to work with, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, that was a learning curve. When you and I talked, it was the beginning, and I was like, wow, we're good now. We're
Okay,
good.
that's good.
Much better.
So my other question is, I know that of recent, we've had some leash law,
Mhm.
loose dog kind of incidents. Have those curtailed any at all? Are we seeing any change or?
I mean, I think it's a mixed. The answer to that is not one that I can give you hardcore, because there's always going to be somebody who thinks it's fine.
Sure.
These people are very difficult sometimes to change behavior when people don't think they're doing anything wrong. I think that I got a bunch of calls. There was something in the newsletter or the utility release. I got several phone calls related to that. Several people apparently did not know, so that was extremely helpful. Some people weren't super happy, but I feel like that information, getting it out there in that way was very helpful. So will it curtail? We still have to see. We also increased patrols. So the officers, they have their hot areas. We know where they are. They're supposed to be out there 3 times a day. Basically, they start patrolling as soon as they're done cleaning, so 9-ish, which is a little tiny bit late. If we have a suspect that we know is going to be there at 7, we'll divert. But 9, noon, 5, and 6 is also a hot time. So they're out there patrolling these hot areas in a much more concentrated way than they were before. I don't know that it's generated any citations, though, to be honest with you. We'll get reports and it'll say, oh, over here at this area, everybody lets their dogs out, and we'll go over there and there will be 0. It could be because somebody gets on Nextdoor and says, hey, I accidentally ratted us out. Don't do this for now. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's really generated a lot in the way of enforcement, but the visibility it is what it is. You can't replace the visibility. And those trucks are so easy to identify. It could be just that we're not going to generate citations because people can see us.
Yeah.
Could be.
Do we have a practice of monitoring Nextdoor, Facebook? Because I know
Yes.
there are a few pages on Facebook that I follow that are pretty common for people to post a picture of a loose dog.
Yeah. So we do, I don't, but I have one resident who he's on my staff, so he's able to access the resident. And we actually returned quite a few dogs to their owners using Nextdoor.
Great.
Quite a few, many, where somebody says, oh, Fluffy Husky was loose over here at this time, and here's Mrs. Smith has Fluffy Husky in her garage. Can you please go get it? And we coordinate with those 2 people. With basically very little work on the part of the shelter. So it's a very helpful tool. Those are the ones that we get home without any help. That's great.
Good.
But I do see the ones where it's like, hey, Fluffy is out again. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Here's Fluffy again. He's over my fence. I think that in some cases the Nextdoor makes a huge difference for that. In some cases not. You know this as well as I do. Some people just don't think there's a problem.
Yep.
Yeah, that's hard to fix.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Thank you, ladies. Great presentation. Okay, let's move on to the next item is discuss special event calendar and future events.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Fairchild, Special Events Manager. Nice to see council. And again, I'm going to, we were here a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to kind of touch on some things from that previous presentation, and then expand a little bit on today for our overview, and hopefully come away with some direction on this year's calendar events, as well as some particular events in question. But here we go. So just a little background. We talked about our last events, our last presentation were about 60 events department-wide, our 25 major, which we would classify as Bluegrass, Independence Day, Christmas tree lighting, our medium-sized events, which are more of your like daddy-daughter dance and craft fair, and then our what we would categorize as minor, your pumpkin splash, things of that nature, some things at the dog park as well. We've had a tremendous increase in events from year over year, starting in 2018. We put that number around 60% since then. So it's really expanded our offerings to the community, but it's come at some painful growth, as we would say. Last time we were here, we presented some benchmarks from some surrounding cities, Carrollton, Addison, Coppell, just kind of comparing a little bit about the frequency, what you see at other cities. And we were actually at the top of that list. We were up there about our 25 major, just throwing some numbers again, Irving with 13, Coppell 8, Carrollton 16. So just wanted to kind of put that up out there just as a little bit of a comparison to what you're seeing surrounding Farmers Branch. And then the challenges, we had touched on that last time with the staff shortages, the part-time turnover, the duplicity of some of our events, the fundraising constraints, and of course the efficient use of our parks staff throughout and all the things that they are tasked with on a daily basis, and then getting drawn into doing events, and how's that affecting their normal day-to-day operations, not just for our park maintenance side, but also those that staff out of our rec facilities and even our aquatic facility. So that's a little bit of the background from the last presentation, just to refresh your memory there. So we were asked to put together some event expenses. I won't go event by event, but I think you've got in your packet there, you can kind of see the breakdown of what were the events, consistencies in the event expenses there across the board. We apply for our budget, we project what we think the event's going to cost us, and then so we've been fairly consistent in those event expenses there for some of our more major events that you're seeing there. Moving on to event revenue. This one is one that kind of fluctuates. It can depend on the year, the event, the programming that takes place that particular year. I was at Park Board earlier or last week, and just looking at the revenue from Bloom and Bluegrass, it was up. One year attendance may fall just depending on people's preference. The lineup changes year to year. It just kind of, that can affect that as well. Independence Day, I mean, you can kind of see some consistency there, but this is one of those, several of our events are ticketed, majority are not. And our revenue sources, our philosophy has always been, it's a amenity to our residents. Mainly our funding comes from sponsorship, food and beverage commissions, and any of event participation by way of like a marketplace or something along those lines. Event attendance, you can see there, we obviously had the COVID year, that would be the missing piece there, but again, it can kind of fluctuate. If there's a rain out, that's why you might see a dip there on some things, but it just kind of it's all over the place. Kind of depends on the year, depends on the weather that day. So a lot of factors can go into the attendance of that particular event. So recommendations, that's kind of touching on from previous, scaling back, if you will. Transitioning is the word we're looking for, condensing the number of offerings. Didn't Drive Live, we had talked about going down from 6 down to 4, transitioning the family night in the park. We currently do 2 of those, transitioning one into La Jolla when the grand opening, and then more. That's just kind of, we're not real sure how that's going to look and feel once that park opens, as far as the how often, the frequency, and what the scope of what those events will look like. But that is something that we will be transitioning into a recommendation there, and then reducing some of the fall events we had touched on, like the hedge and the Halloween in the park, eliminating that, and just kind of looking across the board and saying, hey, what is the duplicity? What can we combine? And then obviously going into Christmas in the Branch to currently have the tree lighting, which is our main, the first Saturday of December, and then we had to follow up the 2 holiday markets, condensing that, transitioning that into a much larger tree lighting event, extending the hours on that first Saturday, adding more dollars to programming. And then, as we touched on last time, the current decor holiday rental thing that we're looking at right now, about to go out to bid on, we definitely know that those funds will be needed for to fund that when that bid comes back in. So those are some of the recommendations we're looking at moving forward. This would be for 2023. So we are, this is our planning time of year. So we are right in the thick of things, making decisions. We've got holding a lot of dates and things of that nature. So this is what you would see right now, our 2023 calendar, this kind of mirrors what we did last year as far as the frequency and the times of year for our major events here in the Branch. Some additional events that would be coming online. Heard about John Burke, Hoya, obviously that's a big one, and then the Branch Connection at a facility. So a couple things adding more to the mix this year for consideration. And then this is what we touched on the last time, the proposed calendar. The family night in the park, reduction of the Denton Drive Live events, September and August, the holiday markets, the 2 there, and transitioning into more for the tree lighting night, and then Santa on the Move, which was currently slated for 2 weekends, condensing that into 1 weekend, the second there in December. So that is the first component of this presentation, is a consensus on, is this something that we can agree to moving forward for 2023? As we alluded to, it's getting into almost now March, so we've definitely we've got some things solidified up with Denton Drive Live. Obviously, Independence Day, we've solidified some things as well, but really could use the direction on is this something in principle and concept is good? And then we can come back to this. I'm going to kind of keep going with the presentation, unless we stop here and we can discuss this one.
Council, comments, opinions,
Okay, I'll keep,
questions?
no,
I have one.
No, Dave's got a
Yes,
question.
yes, sir.
If I may. You go back to the definition of between major, major, medium, and minor. I think understanding what signature events are, or what are, the events we really promote are the ones that we're putting in that major category. I understand that.
Okay.
And
Ma-
so help me understand where the delineation is. Is it dollars spent? Is it time of man hours input? Is it?
All of the above,
I
Councilman.
understand,
So-
but I think there's a gradation in understanding how you get from bucket 1 to bucket 3 and understand the difference.
We could go like with division, facility, there's several ways we can look at that. Obviously, our team would be handling the major outdoor events that you see here. Now, we have had to, by way of just being able to survive, had to parcel some of these events out, like Halloween in the park, had to go to the rec staff because we had Bloom and Bluegrass. So there was, over time, the department realized, hey, we've got to, so some of these special events, these major ones have gone to the facilities. Veterans Day was at the Branch Connection. It made sense to do there. So, and then the Fish and Fun was over at the Branch Connection. So these are what you would say our major events. Now it drops down to the medium-sized one, and I don't have the list in front of me, but it's more, again, it's the daddy-daughter dance. These are more programmed out of the facilities or the historical park. And then the entry, I don't think entry level, the smaller ones would be more the program, your teas that had the really defined, there's only 20 spaces at this one that people can sign up for. So that's how that's been kind of broken out. It could be by budget, by attendance, by location. It's kind of a combination of how we got to that determination.
Okay.
Did that answer?
It does.
Okay,
I have some suggestions, but I'll hold them for later.
sure,
Good.
absolutely.
Let me throw some ideas out to you guys and
Sure.
get some response from you. I think it might make sense for us to condense our Christmas into one big event. We've got several going on there. A lot of our staff, this holidays, we're all busy, and to tie up a lot of staff time on several events and just do one and do it well with that and condense that down somewhat. I think the Viva event, we might be able to do with the La Jolla Park thing and do that thing. But if we're going to do things that are community, I would like for us to think about the idea of doing a unity event, some inclusiveness of all people. You walked your district in voting. You have people from all over the world out there. And if we can come up with some kind of event that encompasses that, and I don't know, we'll ask for creativity here on what that vehicle is like, but something to unify people and from all nationalities of the world. We're the great mixing pot of the world, and how do we deal with that and inclusion? And all these different ethnic groups have foods and all these kind of things that they are specific to their countries, and we could do some it's kind of like a chili cook-off, only nationality foods and things like that we could do. Condense some of these events into one that really meaningful that we can get people out to. And we need to get a lot of these people involved. A lot of these people come from countries where they're not involved with their government. And they don't come out. You see it, they won't answer the door because they don't involve with how their government operates. And get them more involved in our community in that fashion to be part of the community. It's a thought I have. I sense we're not reaching out to that, especially the new people on the west side of the city. So, for what it's worth.
I walked it Sunday. It's pretty, yeah. Yeah, that is where the change is happening. So we're not losing, we're gaining. And that gain is it's just furthering the diversity. And we just need to take that into consideration when we make our decisions now, is they do feel isolated and they don't have, for whatever reason, they just don't feel like they're included in anything.
Yeah, and I think it's wrong for us to try to focus on one ethnicity or emphasize that type thing. So to me, it's just, I think there's a better way that we could do some of this stuff and you know, be more inclusive in my community and it's getting people out and getting together and because every culture brings something to the table. So for what it's worth.
Well, that's actually kind of segues right into the next slide here, if you will, because we have been tasked with, you know, what would that look like, Mayor, if we were to transition or to create on its own a multicultural event, building on the success of obviously of Viva Farmers Branch, which was in its second year, had tremendous growth, doubled in attendance. That was obviously for the Hispanic community. It was held during the Hispanic Heritage Month, or should the city consider transitioning into a multicultural event that, as you say, encompasses all the residents and all the different cultures that chose to live here in Farmers Branch. So that is something we can definitely discuss, and the council can hopefully give us that direction. We had some ideas on this. I know last time it was, you know, what would that multicultural event look like? It could be representative of Farmers Branch, the community, or perhaps the world. It really kind of just what we want it to be. There's no set definition of how that should look and feel. It would obviously encompass food, music, art, traditions, history, customs. It could be all encompassing for that. This is one thing we would highly encourage, and seeing some of the success of these types of events in other communities, that it takes a village. It takes a steering committee of residents who are vested in this and who want to be part of this, not just for input, but for participation. So we would definitely feel that it would be a critical part of and how you would create that committee, if that would be just a open call and you know, set a date, a meeting date. And but I think it would need to be defined as far as here's our expectation. You know, it's not just one meeting. It would probably be a dozen planning meetings throughout the year, and the frequency would increase as it got closer to the event date. So but this could be a sounding board. It could be input. But definitely, I think a steering committee would be a viable part of this process. And then the earliest, if the council chose to go in this direction, would be March of 2024 that we feel we could put this together. But to do that would mean making some decisions with regards to Viva, because that is coming up. It is scheduled for September 16th, which is, again, Hispanic Heritage Month. We have already, just by virtue of planning, secured some things for that event. So if that would be an option, keep that as is in 2023, or option two would be transition to multicultural in 2024, which would mean Viva would basically come off the calendar for 2023, and it would have its place and live as part of this multicultural event in 2024. But that would be the earliest we feel that we could, you know, put this together to the standards I think that we're wanting this to be.
When is La Jolla supposed to be ready to go? Do we have any idea?
So question, when was Hoya supposed to be opening?
Yes,
So we're looking at some point this summer.
this summer. So it would be we'd have it open, and if we kind of kept it in the Viva thing in the same venue, we could be the time frame would be there to do that.
So what we're looking at for Viva is either keeping it as is for 23 for September, or pushing it to, if we're gonna do the multicultural, for the spring for 24, for 24.
And that's a second part of our direction today, is to get that, you know, desire of council. What would you like to see us, which option do you feel is best suited for the future of our city?
Well, let's give some direction here, guys, so the staff can act forward.
Mayor, don't we have this item on our regular
Yeah.
agenda this evening to get
So,
some citizen
Clarity.
input
yeah.
as well?
Yeah.
So I would like to hear that citizen input, if there is any,
Okay.
before making a decision.
Okay.
I have a question of clarification. So I like the idea of expanding the principles and concept of Viva into a more multicultural based theme. The steering committee, would that be a committee that we would include in our normal board and commission process? So it'd be appointing people or applicants in May, June timeframe, and they would serve terms and such, or is this something that's a little bit different than that?
I would envision that to be a little different than that because, as we have learned, when it comes to events and planning and everything, if there's not a quorum or if there's not, we can't be held up by that. We need to
Okay.
keep the train moving, and but it's how that process is selected. It's whether you want people who are interested and want to be on this.
Passionate about it.
Yes, and they're going to understand that it's, again, not just a meeting. I'm vested in this. I'm going to be at these meetings. Obviously, things come up, but we're there through the process, and we will. But I don't think it's to the point of that formal
Okay.
type of board. I
That-
think
that's
it's more of a, and how that's structured. I don't know from a city standpoint of what all the things that have to be from a legality standpoint. I don't know how loose it can be.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Can we go to the list? Just the entire list. This is more for our staff. My concerns on this are more for the staff. So we have 8 in April, events in April. We have 7 in May. We have 6 in September. We have 7 in October, and we have 10 in December. And honestly, I just don't know how they sustain that and keep families.
Now those are spread out over.
I understand, but when
Okay.
you're looking at 67 events and there are 52 weeks in a year, then you have spread yourself thin. So just pointing the elephant in the room out.
So what I can tell you with the list of the 67, we're looking internally at those events and ways that we can curtail that aren't going to upset the masses. So some of those decisions we're able to make internally, and then what we're looking for is these major events. But yes, you're correct.
I know I am. We had that conversation. So then my next question would be, are there any other events that you feel like we could combine in those heavier months to make it easier, like Mayor Glancy said for December?
Well, and that's part of what that recommendation is. So with some of these, you have your department or divisional, right, rec center, aquatic center, so they may not be completely the same. One of the recommendations at one point that we discussed was haunted houses and Halloween in the park. However, they're 2 different demographics. One is more of your school kids, they just want to come to a quiet trick or treat, see the houses. Where the other one is they're larger than. So we have been having this conversation in between. We've reduced some of the programs so the moms and sons, not the historical park one, but the rec center one is one that we've discussed not even doing at this point. We haven't done it before. It was one that was brought forward. So again, we're making some of those decisions internally now without impacting major groups.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got more questions, Mayor. So what's not shown on this list, there's a footnote to this effect that there are several athletic tournaments, right, throughout the year. It's on the broader list, Dallas Girls International Cup, DKSC, and other tournaments. Are those events costing the city money, or are they break even, or the revenue?
So that is where you have to find the breakdown on some of the tournaments, because it doesn't all just come to us, right? It's hotel motel, it goes into their accounts, but it does cost the city money because it takes our park staff and staff and tourism to put these events on.
Right.
And the marketing expenses.
So there's more costs involved, and we've talked about this before. Rachel, the fire and police expense is not included in the cost column. So when I look at just the top 12 events out of the 25 major and the 60 plus total, over $700,000 a year doesn't include a lot more costs. Police, fire, soccer tournaments, those kinds of things. There's a lot higher cost to this. Another question of mine is for the Denton Drive Live series. So I see that we're proposing we strike the August concert. There's also a July concert that's just a week and a half, 2 weeks following our big Independence Day celebration. Any reason why we wouldn't strike the July concert since we just had a big one for the Independence Day?
I mean, I can tell you our staff is rested. I mean, we're ready to go for that one. There's not a staffing shortage for that event. It's not,
Okay.
we've just not encountered any challenges for that particular, for the proximity to, I understand it looks like that, but we've been able to do it now for 3 years and there's not been any challenges with that as far as, I mean, the proximity. You would think, oh, we're pretty tired, we need to, but
Sure.
Less staff is required for Denton Drive Live than your Independence Day.
Okay.
So that's part of the reason. We did discuss it, but again, that would then shorten the series to 3 versus the 6.
April,
so,
May, and June. Right.
Unless we just spread them out. So we're trying to be cognizant of what the intent of Denton Drive Live is, the series, and keeping it going. And obviously respectful of not cutting out too much.
Right. So we're looking at a Denton Drive Live and a Hoya grand opening on July 15th, the same day. And we're looking at combining those two this year. Or?
So the grand opening for Hoya, the date is still to be determined. Those are opportunities.
Okay.
That'll depend a lot on the weather between now and
Sure.
then.
I'll be able to do it this year.
And the cost of each Denton Drive Live, and we've got a band that we're paying for and such, other than staff, what's the average cost? Is it like 10 or 12,000? Is that what I saw?
without staff, those events run about 8,000. And that includes 2 headliner bands, sound production, restrooms, overnight security. So that's
About 8,000.
it's about 8,000
Okay.
advertising. That's what those come to.
Okay.
Rachel, on our athletic events, I understand we used to do, if they book so many nights in our hotels, do we not credit them back some part of it to get them, it's an incentive thing to get them to stay in our hotels. It's not a lot, but the associations get some money credit back that they can spend based on how many hotel nights we get out of it, so. Okay,
And so, Mayor, to that point, I'm looking for the email. I want to say that Bloomin' Bluegrass alone accounted for about $6,500 in hotel motel tax revenue. So $6,500. It's not a big number. That's it's our biggest event compared to the $239,000 we spend on that event alone. For a separate discussion, there's got to be some opportunities for us to improve our revenue position on that particular event alone, given the size and the exposure it gives our city. But just
seems
as
like an awful low number.
a point of reference, the hotel motel, I'm looking for that email now.
Well,
Is
he
there any
looks,
way we let the people know staying here that there's a benefit for them to stay in the hotels in our city?
Mhm.
Okay. Do their, okay. All right. Any other questions about that?
well, he
We
looks
will
for his
get you a
email.
decision tonight.
Yes. I'm going to be the bad guy on the block again.
You're wearing black.
I
so-
know, right? I feel like, well, no, it's coming.
Just joking.
Oh, I'm going to take Fish and Fun and Veterans Day away.
Yeah.
And just for the record, my husband is a veteran. But I just feel like as if we're really making decisions based on low man on totem pole and the revenue versus expense, and because they aren't revenue producers, and I haven't seen where there's any sponsorship for them. So that doesn't even compensate. So, I mean,
There are sponsorship revenue for both of those events.
okay.
I just didn't, I included it in one and I decided not to include in the rest of them because I wasn't, it's not all, sponsorship revenue goes into one one account.
Okay.
And then it's allocated depending on how the package is set. We do bring in sponsorship revenue. Last year was $10,000 for Veterans Day. The year before that was $2,000. I don't know the number off the top of my head for Fishing Fund.
Okay.
But the philosophy on those two events is those are your feel good, right? Fishing Fun is really and truly one of the only events that we have that is geared towards parks and towards outdoors and education. We're a Parks and Rec department.
Right.
And it's been a long-standing event for 20 years, so I understand the revenue and expense aspect of it. Veterans Day, right? We're honoring our veterans at this point. We've had a general attendance. Now we've changed the program a little bit over the last couple of years, so there's been very attendance there, but we've still managed to keep that. And same philosophy. The idea wasn't, the intent wasn't to generate revenue, but to.
So I
serve a
don't think it
purpose.
needs to necessarily generate revenue, but it shouldn't be a tax deficit either at a complete loss. And that's where my concerns were when I was looking through all of this and then weighing in the personnel issues and, you know, just maintaining all of this, because at some point we're going to want to add something. And where does that go?
Have we ever approached Bass Pro Shop or anybody of those people to see if they want to sponsor
We
it?
are low on their totem pole, but yes, we have. Sandy, I don't know if you have any other.
I have. No, and I've reached out and I reached out to them to sponsor and they sent us $800 in coupons. So we actually used those last year.
They didn't want to buy catfish.
So we were able to help in little ways. So we're just, they have a lot of people reaching out for events and stuff. So
So Mayor, to clarify, and Joria helped keep me honest here. You gave me a figure of $64,000 in hotel revenue generated from the Bloomin' Bluegrass. That's not our revenue, that's the hotel's revenue, correct? Sorry, I thought you were hearing me and trying to look something up. You had sent me a grid, this one, right? The 64,000 hotel revenue generated, that's hotel revenue, it's not our revenue, correct?
Yes.
Okay, the 4,400, almost $4,500 occupancy tax collected is what we got from hotel motel for that weekend of Bluegrass. Is that right?
So yeah, so that's the revenue that we would generate. We do not, Parks does not receive that.
Okay,
So
so
we just get a small percent of hotel motel. Most of them goes to the state.
as big as that event is, and as great as it is for hotels, our benefit is $4,500 from that. I just want to make sure
That's one figure.
that's one figure.
One figure. It's not total. Let's be honest. There's goodwill. The fact that the event has been noted as one of the largest and most recognized events in that particular genre.
Mhm.
And we're announced on, there's an economic benefit that you're not capturing. I think I referenced that last time. There's some goodwill that, a P&L you're not necessarily capturing here. And I think we need to be careful that all of a sudden, if we're looking at P&L on all these events, we wouldn't host any of them, period. Let's be blunt.
Sure.
But we have to look at what's important. And so where I was going, Jeff, and I said I had some ideas later, I think we need a strategy document that handles and addresses what we're doing for events. We can sit here and cherry pick. I don't like this one. I think it makes sense to do that one, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think that gets us very far. I think we need to look at this in a holistic picture from a multitude of buckets that are going on. And not only the major events that we want to host and be branded with, from a Farmers Branch host this event, to the ones that we support in our facilities, the ones that we support with staff, in your staff specifically. I think there's a lot on the table. And if we're just going to look at 25 major events and start, culling it down, I don't think that serves us very well in the long run. I know you have operational issues to deal with this year. I hear that. But I think we need to look at this holistically. Our friends over in Addison have a strategic, special events plan. It's 144 pages. And guess what, guys? They have the same problems, staffing, the number of events growing, but it's talking about branding our community and making sure we don't throw something out that was something that we really wanted to keep. I know many of us around this table have heard in the past, we changed the Christmas program.
Yes.
I think that's a casualty of this and this type of mentality going forward. So I would propose, here's my recommendation, that we pull this back and come up with a strategic plan that allows us to sit in a room and figure out how we define major, medium, and minor, and where those elements are based on what we have, and not just try to do it in the course of a study session issue or an event downstairs on the regular agenda. So that's my recommendation there. So I'll leave it at that. There's a lot going on. There are other communities that do Kaleidoscope, I believe maybe in Capel. There's others, I believe that there's another Unity group already going on for multicultural. We need to look at what that, what goes into that. But I think we're on a very slippery slope, just trying to cull things here in this setting. That's just my 2 cents.
I definitely feel like there's more information and understanding to gain in this process. My point in highlighting this occupancy tax collected as $4,500 is the perception of the Bluegrass event. And I attended it for the first time this year, by the way, and I thought it was like one of the most greatest events I've ever been to. I was very proud that it was in Farmers Branch. And I see that event as more of a marketing opportunity to Farmers Branch. Whether it brings us revenue or not, the perception of that event is Farmers Branch must be killing it with so many people coming to Farmers Branch. The reality is that it's killing us if you just look at the pure P&L. That's all. And so I think there's opportunities for us to
they come and eat in our restaurants.
understand.
So there's other numbers
that.
that are not necessarily, it's not necessarily killing us.
Well,
You're big
according
on the businesses, and you've said this in the past. If your businesses are hosting the 4,000 to 6,000 visitors that are coming into our community, they're going to eat at our restaurants. Hopefully, they're
Right.
going to eat somewhere. They're going to stay in our hotels, as we've already said. So
Right.
there's an economic impact here.
they're staying in our hotels, and our hotels are getting 64,000, and we're getting 4,500. And all I'm saying is that the average ticket price for this event and other locations is much higher than what we charge. And even if we were to get up to the same point in ticket price, it's still not going to make that big of a dent in what it means when it comes to the bottom line. $239,000 of cost, which does not even include police and fire.
I understand.
That's a lot of overtime. It's a lot of staff. It's our largest event. Probably we put the most police and fire out there that of any event in the year, right? We can't cover that with
Independence
Day.
regular
So sure
shift
about
work.
that.
Independence Day might challenge that.
Yeah.
Okay,
other
Independence Day
large
is another
events,
big
too.
one, right? But
We don't pay for.
I
We
see
don't charge for
Independence
that.
Day more of a Farmers Branch resident amenity than I do the marketing purpose of Bluegrass. Albeit, I'm sure we have a lot of Farmers Branch residents that attend.
We
That
do.
largely brings in people from outside of the Metroplex and even the
I would
state.
challenge you that the same
So-
holds true for
Yeah.
Independence Day as well.
Understood. The bottom line
Alright,
is
so
we spend
this-
240,
I agree.
we make
There's
60
a lot
to
of
80.
questions to be answered here, and I'm suggesting that we're not going to satisfy any of us in this table or their community by culling, this event or that event in order to give Jeff direction in the next, months to work on.
Right. And I said that up front. I feel like there's a lot more information and insight that we need in order to make better decisions and to be strategic about it. That's important, I believe, as well. But my point was the perception of the Bluegrass event would be that Farmers Branch is making a lot of money from that. And I wanted to be clear that we're not. And so there's opportunity for us to improve that and make better use of taxpayer
Yeah,
dollars.
I think
That's
if
all.
we start to go through that and we find out we don't make,
Yeah.
that there's a
None of
loss
these
on
are gonna be
Independence Day as well.
revenue generators, and they tell me, from talking with those people over the years, that this bluegrass thing has become a very prestigious, accepted event. Farmers Branch has a lot of notoriety in the fact that we do it among those people. Now, I don't travel in that circle, so I really don't know what all that is. But there's a lot of public relations that comes from that
Mhm.
perception.
Agreed. Agreed.
May, 2 points to make. Regarding Blue and Bluegrass, outside of the hotel and motel tax, we do generate revenue from our marketplace and concessions. We get a purchase of 70,000, and we receive a percentage of that. And then as far as culling and just making decisions, it was a very strategic decision in how we chose the events that we did. It wasn't just nope, I think these ones, this one. Based on Jeff, his team's expertise in running the events and how it impacts the community. They looked at the revenue, they looked at the expense, they looked at what it takes staff-wise, attendance-wise, and just even an impact. Do we need 6 tent drive lives, or will 4 suffice? We're still able to give the type of event that we do need 6 of them. Same thing with family night, understanding that we buckled it with, the beginning, the end of school, and the beginning of school, but we've had various formats of that. We've had in the middle of the summer and here. They chose weekends that they knew would be successful. However, one of those weekends ended up being Memorial Day weekend, so we've now taken another opportunity from our staff. So the decisions were made with strategy in mind between what they bring to the community, and then also from a staff perspective.
Understood. We have 4 months on the calendar where there is an event every weekend. So we're practically throughout the year, it's every other weekend. Staff's working days, nights, and weekends. So the cost of the events is almost as important as considering the resources it takes to support these events. I would suggest that the cost doesn't matter if we're losing staff, we can't keep staff or get staff to support the events.
David, I have a question since
Yes.
you're familiar with Addison. Do they do all their events internally, or do they hire someone?
They have some third parties as well. Yeah, I mean, and again, this is part of that discussion of how that works. And some of that may be third party considered. Jeff, it could be a third party in this particular approach, or it could be totally outside of that. So it depends on how. I'm not familiar with, I only read their document, but they're encountering the same problems that we are. Number of events are going up, the number of staff in order to support the events, the cost revenue, they're all there. But you want to make sure that it's an economic driver and you have the ability to provide services and amenities. And these are amenities to our community. And it's not just Farmers Branch residents, it's the ability to be a driver to come to our community. You've been to those, we've all been to the Denton Drive Live events. And I know when I'm standing on the dais up there and I ask how many from out of town, there's a number of folks that raise their hand. So we're drawing people from, around our community, beyond the 4 walls of Farmers Branch. I think that's important. And this is an area where it's not cost recovery is the major driver. I want to be careful of that, because otherwise you wouldn't do any of this and you would have no Parks and Rec, period. So you have to be careful there.
I agree. I feel like there needs to be some balance.
We can get
Balance,
played on
yeah.
these things. Years ago, we did Liberty Fest, and it sounded like a good idea. We brought lots of people into the park, and they would bring us a list of entertainers, which was $30,000 or $40,000 or whatever, and we would select one. Well, the booking agents are pretty smart. When they booked that, the next night they booked them up at Choctaw. I'm sure it probably a discount from what we paid, and they're charging $50 to see it. We were just giving it to them for free. So, but anyway, all right, any other discussion on that?
I would just like to say that I think Councilman Merritt's suggestion of us looking at what we want our events to be for the city and our residents and the broader marketing, branding implications, I think that makes a lot of sense because you just mentioned we did the Liberty a few years ago and et cetera. And we've had other events that we've had and then they've changed as council has changed. And from 10 years ago, the city's population to where we're going to be when everything on the west side that's been approved is built out, we're going to be over 50,000 people. So we're going to more than double our size. And we're not just more ethnically diverse and everything, but I think this is a broader discussion, and I think that makes more sense. And I could talk about some of the other events, but just to the Bloom and Bluegrass Festival, I had breakfast with several residents this morning, and some who attend most of our events and have for a long time, long-term residents. And anyway, I got a lot of reactions on things, but with the Bloom and Bluegrass, it is a nationally recognized event. People come here from all over the country, not just the bands that come here from Virginia and Tennessee, et cetera. And I've been fortunate enough, I've been a big fan of Bloom and Bluegrass. I've attended that for many years. And the last 2 years, I've enjoyed introducing the bands on one of the nights. And I've gotten to be backstage and meet a lot of the staff that run it. I can't remember the gentleman's name who actually lives here in Farmers Branch that runs the Bluegrass Music Association, whatever it's called. And they, I believe, can do a little bit better job with some things. And I'll just give you one example. And as Rachel mentioned, we do get revenue from sales and things like that. And I know this event this year, they were shocked that they had sold out of almost all of their merchandise on the Friday night. And so Saturday afternoon and evening, they were turning people away. They said, well, I want to buy that T-shirt and that T-shirt. My friends bought 3 of those yesterday. They said, we don't have them. And so I think we can work, and the parks can work with those guys. And I mean, they want their event to be bigger and more successful and grow. And I'm sure whenever we had it the first 2 years, it probably didn't have the recognition, the following, and the attendance that it has now, And so I think there's just a lot of things we need to unpack here. And I think we need to have some consistency and kind of a marketing plan. And then we get into all the execution and, well, let's eliminate this one or whatever. And again, for a lot of our events, whether it's Christmas or summer, whatever, sometimes they're postponed, they're canceled completely because of weather. We have thunderstorms, tornado warnings. And of course, we've had, I think, each of the last few summers, we've had one of the Denton Drive Live canceled just because of the heat. So I think going from 5 to 4 on that makes a lot of sense. But whatever amount we end up with, we're likely to have some that people really like, really attend, that are going to fall out because of weather and other things we can't control.
Okay, well, let's think about it. Give the staff some direction tonight, whether we need more study on it, more direction or limited or whatever, so. Okay. How about future agenda items? Anybody have anything they'd like to put on the future study sessions or agenda?
I'd like to, is it possible for us to record all the board meetings? Since we can't all be at every place at one time, so we can watch them. I mean, we do on.
video them now,
Every
Yeah.
board and commission.
Mhm.
like Parks and Rec and library, we don't record those. Do we?
Mm-mm.
Some of them, Flea and Z we do, and some
Right.
of the others.
I think that would be
We have
very,
to look at the cost. I mean, that would be
Okay.
extraordinarily expensive to record all of
Yeah.
those.
Okay.
Yes, very. And a lot of the facilities aren't set up to record. Like this room
Right.
is very much set up for it. A lot of them are meeting in non-recordable style rooms, such as if we were doing the strategic planning session, we're not planning to record that one just to get all the infrastructure AV in there to make sure everybody can be heard. It's one thing to record it, but to make sure the voices can be heard. We can definitely look at that number, but I know it's because then we retain as well. So it's a twofold cost. There's the cost to do it. Then there's the cost to hold on for it for as long as the retention requirements are, which is years. But we
Okay.
can definitely find out what that number is. Are you okay with the memo for that one to
Yeah.
bring it back? Okay.
They record minutes for their meetings, don't they?
Yes, yes.
So maybe we can get some copies of minutes and distribute so that at least you'll know the subject matter, what they're talking about.
Those are on transcripts.
And then one more. I know that we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, the elections. I feel like going forward, it needs to be a bid process just to make certain that we stay compliant and that we're not just going with a vendor to go with a vendor.
Okay.
Can I interject something there?
Absolutely.
The a contract to conduct the city elections would be considered a professional service. So you don't have to submit it to competitive bidding. You can request competitive bids and proposals, but there's going to be a limited number of vendors out there, as opposed to the city doing it in-house and contracting with the county to get machines and whatever else is needed to conduct the elections. So.
There are other people that do it, though.
Say again?
There are other people that do it besides just Dallas.
I can't answer. I don't know that answer, Mayor.
Yes,
But
there are.
Why don't we research that and see who else is out there that
Okay.
does the thing? See if we can.
We'll find out.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I'll adjourn our meeting and we'll reconvene at 6 PM. We don't have anything executive, do we do?
no, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll adjourn our meeting and reconvene downstairs at 6 PM, folks.